Hi everyone, I know it's hard to believe, but we're already halfway through 2023, so before I head out to convention season this summer, I wanted to talk about some of my favorite board games that I've played already this year.
I'm listening.
So if you want to know my mid-year picks for board games that you should definitely check out, then might I suggest... Hi, I'm Alex from Might I Suggest a Game, a channel devoted to helping you find your perfect board game. Today, like I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about my top games of the year so far in 2023, and let me tell you, this list has me so excited. I've gotten 232 plays of 130 unique board games already this year, but I've managed to narrow it down to 5 particular games that really stood out to me. Now, if you've seen one of my top games lists before, you'll know that I don't usually do the typical rankings. Instead, I have 5 main categories that I like to operate within. Number 1 is my top Table Hogger, which is the game that I played the most in this period of time. Then next is the top new game in my collection, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then we have the top game off the back of my shelf, aka a game that I haven't played in a while that I recently got back into. And then there's my top second date game, which is a game that I played one time but I'd really like a second chance at. And then finally, of course, is my top overall game for the first half of the year. Let me know what your picks are for these categories down in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit subscribe and that little bell button so you can get notified when I post new content. Anyways, let's get into it. Will one of my favorite games from the first half of the year be the perfect game for you? Let's find out, shall we? Alright, the first category that we're going to be talking about is my top Table Hogger of the first 6 months of the year, and this one has to go to Acropolis. I played this game a ton, both in person and on Board Game Arena, and it is just so good. Acropolis is a super quick, tile-laying, city-building game for 2 to 4 players. In the game, you're going to be creating your Acropolis by not only building out, but also building up. Each of the little triple hex tiles that you add into your city have different types of buildings on them, which all score differently, which leads to this really interesting point salad kind of multiplier scoring at the end of the game. One of the things that I really love about this game is how quick it is. I mean, even with new players, I was able to get through the rules and a whole new game in about 30 minutes, which is pretty hard to do, especially for a game of this depth. I mean, the gameplay itself is really simple. Every turn you're just drafting one of these hex tiles and placing them in your city to try to score points, but the strategy comes with gaining different multipliers and stacking tiles on top of your city to really maximize your points. I think the stacking mechanic in particular is really exciting and something that not a lot of tile laying games do, and when you have to start thinking in 3D, it adds just enough of an element of strategy that it makes people hungry for more. I also really like that you're pretty limited to what you can get into your city every turn. It makes the drafting really tactical and limiting, but in a good way, and basically takes away a lot of analysis paralysis that these tile laying games can usually have. One of the main reasons though that I played Acropolis so much is because I really think it's great for new and veteran gamers alike. The really simple rule set and gameplay makes it really easy to get into, but as you play the game, you start to understand some of the strategy about when to get the multipliers and when to stack your tiles and when to spend your marble, etc, etc. Almost every game that I played of this game with new players has ended with them saying, oh, I could have made this move and it would have been totally better, but it was so quick, why don't we just play again? And that's where I think this game really shines. Acropolis is super ripe for replayability because of the randomness of the drafting. It plays different every time, and because it's so quick, most people don't have an issue with going a second round. I love games where you can just run it back right away, and Acropolis is definitely one of them. So if you're looking for a light and clever game to get you warmed up for the rest of game night with surprising depth and a really speedy playtime, then might I suggest Acropolis. Alright, the next category that I'm going to be talking about is the top new game in my collection, which has to go to Challengers. Now, I got a chance to play this one a number of times before I owned it, but as soon as it got nominated for the Kennerspiel des Jahres award, I knew I had to have a copy. Challengers is a light, tournament-style, deck-building card game for 1 to 8 players. It kind of plays like a King of the Hill, Capture the Flag style game, where you'll be having these 1v1 duels and kind of doing a round-robin until the final champion emerges. To be honest, this game really took me by surprise, but now when anyone ever mentions it, I'm totally down to play. One of the main things that I like about this game is that it's super easy to pick up. I mean, I basically just tell people that the gameplay is like that old game of War that I used to play with the 52 card decks. You just flip over your cards until your total is higher than your opponent's, and then they flip over cards until they're higher than you, and then you just continue going until someone runs out of cards.
Could it really be that simple?
There's only a few other rules, but those tweaks really make it exciting, which makes it super easy for new players to join in. I also just love how replayable this one is, because your deck that you're building is totally totally determined by what you draw. I mean, you're going to be adding more powerful cards into your deck every turn, and you're trying to find synergies with those, but just because something works in one round doesn't mean someone's not going to have the antidote for it in the next. It's just a really fun exercise in finding those synergies and seeing what cards work together, and I have really loved every single play I've had of this one. And you know, a lot of these deck building games can really be determined by skill, which means new players never have a chance of winning, but I feel like there's just enough luck in the 1v1 duels and the card draws between rounds to make it feel like anyone can win at any time. Now, I'd been mooching off my buddy's copy for a while, but I finally decided to buy this one for a number of different reasons. First off, there's not that many games that play so well at 8 players, and I really think Challengers plays best at 8 players, which is almost unheard of in the board game world. But in addition to the player count, I just think there's something for everyone in this game. The simple gameplay and the ease of the rules makes it really accessible to new players, and finding the strategies and the synergies in the deck building make it really exciting for advanced players. I think games that do both of these well are few and far between, but Challengers really hits the nail on the head. So if you're looking for a battle royale with cards that's super accessible, very replayable, and is best with a ton of people, then might I suggest Challengers. Alright, next one up is my top game off the back of the shelf, which is a game that I haven't played in a while, but I finally got back into and I realized how good it was, and that game is Eminent Domain. Now, this is a game that came out in 2011, so it's been out forever, but I've been playing it a lot recently, especially on BGA, and I've just been reminded at how solid this game is. Eminent Domain is a really streamlined sci-fi deck building game for 2 to 4 players. In the game, you're going to be using your various galactic powers to conquer planets and advance your technology to become the greatest empire the universe has ever seen. Now, the reason why I've gotten back into this game is because my brother-in-law Ryan is really into this game. We've played it a few times over the holidays, but he lives in North Carolina, so I don't get to see him that often. But they came out with a digital implementation of this one on Board Game Arena recently, and we've basically had a running game going of it ever since. Now, full disclosure, I'm usually not a huge fan of deck building games, which is really funny that I already have had 2 of them on this list so far. I usually feel like I don't know what I'm doing in the deck building games, and some of the decisions I make feel important, but I still don't really feel like I have strategy behind them.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
But now that I've gotten a chance to play Eminent Domain a little bit more, I have just loved how streamlined and to the point it is. I mean, this game is just so speedy, especially at 2 players, so even if you make mistakes, you can just run it back and play it again. And also, now that I've played it a bunch of times, I can definitely say with confidence that there are multiple paths to victory. Sometimes deck building games can get caught up in a meta, which needs some expansion or some balancing of the game to change. Eminent Domain, though, definitely has a few strategies that might be stronger than others, but generally I feel like every game is different, and you really have to build your strategy based on the planets that you get. I also really like the action system. I like that you can follow another player's action, which adds a little bit more player interaction than deck builders typically have. Frankly, I just think Eminent Domain is everything that a deck builder should be, and I'm super glad that I've gotten a chance to play it more and more. So if you're looking for a really underrated deck builder that's faster than Dominion and is a lot less bloated, with a ton of really important decisions to be made every turn, then might I suggest Eminent Domain. Alright, moving right along, the top game that I'd like to take on a second date is, of course, Thunder Road Vendetta. I got a chance to play this game recently, and it blew my mind, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. Thunder Road Vendetta is a Mad Maxian death race-themed racing game for 2 to 4 players, or 2 to 6 if you have the Maximum Chrome expansion. You'll be driving through hazards, bashing your opponent's vehicles, calling in airstrikes, and trying to make it to the finish line before all your cars blow up. Now, my first play of this game was absolute chaos. We played with 5 players, which means I got to play as the motorcycle game, which is one of the add-ons in the expansion. I thought playing as the motorcycles was super thematic. I loved how nimble I was in getting around obstacles, but it was also really easy for me to get pushed off the board or into different obstacles. In the game, there was so much bumping and colliding. I think there were multiple players on fire at one point. I'm pretty sure someone jumped off a ramp into a cliff or a helicopter or something, or maybe both. I mean, it was like Fast and the Furious in real life, and I loved every second of it. I haven't played a game in a long time that had me on the edge of my seat like this one did. I mean, a lot of different things came down to die rolls, but because you usually have multiple vehicles to burn, even if you do get a few bad luck rolls, it feels like it all comes back around later in the game. All the different powers and hazards and map tiles make this one feel like it's super replayable, and I can't wait to try this one again. So if you're looking for the quickest way to prove to Vin Diesel that you're family,
There's always room for family.
or if you just want an adrenaline-filled ride that rewards bold decisions and fast and loose gameplay, then might I suggest Thunder Road Vendetta. Alright, and the last category that I'm talking about today is my top overall game of the first half of the year, and this one has to go to Planet Unknown. To be honest, I knew I was going to love this game before I even played it, but now that I've played it a few times, I can definitely confirm I really love this game. Planet Unknown is a Tetris-style, terraforming-themed space game for 1 to 6 players. In the game, you'll be drafting different polyomino tiles to fill up your planet and advance your technology tracks as efficiently as possible to come out on top as the #1 space corporation in the whole galaxy. This is one of those games that just checks all of my boxes. I mean, first off, I love polyomino games. Isle of Cats is in my top 10 games of all time, and Planet Unknown just leads to a really super satisfying puzzle. I also like that you can hypothetically fill out your whole board in Planet Unknown. That's usually my gripe with some polyomino games, when I can't get that satisfying feeling of placing every single tile on the board, but you can do that in this game. Another reason to love it. Also, I love a good efficiency puzzle, and the decisions that you had to make when advancing your technology tracks really scratch that itch for me. I also love games that don't have a lot of downtime because, frankly, I can get distracted. But because this game uses simultaneous play, the downtime is almost zero and the entire playtime of the game is actually surprisingly quick. I mean, there are just so many things to love about this game. You've got double-sided planet boards that can change the difficulty for new or experienced players. You've got asymmetric abilities for the starting factions to differentiate the strategies throughout the game. You've got awesome components like the Lazy Susan tile tray and the little rovers and asteroids, which are great for fidgeting with. And you've got special goals between you and your neighbor that you're competing for that adds just the perfect amount of player interaction. I could go on and on about this game, but let's just say this. This is one of the best games I've played in a really long time, and I'd be very surprised if another game came along and took its spot for my favorite game award at the end of the year. So, if you want an amazing game that showcases the perfect mix of strategy and tactics, is simple to pick up but difficult to master, doesn't overstay its welcome, and honestly just gets me excited to play every single time, then might I suggest Planet Unknown. Thanks for sticking around for my top games of 2023 so far. Let me know what you think about my choices in the comments, and let me know what your nominees would be for these categories. Anyways, thanks to everyone who supported this channel so far. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep growing this channel and keep helping you find your perfect board game. But once again, this has been a Might I Suggest a Game production, and I'm Alex, your board game sommelier, signing off.